Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Barry here with the Scryguystv, and I'm actually going to be giving you guys a deck tech on one of the new commanders from Crimson Vow, Olivia Crimson Bride. This, man, when I saw this is actually pretty crazy. It's one of the cards I pulled from my pre-release, and I was just like, well, that's kind of nuts. So for 4 and Rakdos, legendary creature, vampire noble, flying haste. Whenever Olivia Crimson Bride attacks, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains when you don't control a legendary vampire. Exile this creature. So for 6 mana, we're gonna have to do a lot of ramping, and that's kind of hard in Rakdos. And also, we're going to have to find some way to fill this graveyard with creatures, and I think Rakdos is pretty good at that. But let's go ahead and start with our ramp cards right here. So we're gonna run the standard package. Obviously, this is a little bit more of an expensive build. This is with cards that I have in my collection. So we have things like Mana Crypt, Jeweled Lotus, Soul Ring, Talisman of Indulgence, Wayfarer's Bauble, the Commander Quarters favorite. I really hope that they give that guy his very own Wayfarer's Bauble, like secret layer art. That would be really funny. Prismatic Lens, Rakdos Signet. We had the Fire Diamond, Charcoal Diamond, Arcane Signet. Of course, one of the best gobos in the game, Darkside Extortionist, and Jessica's Will. These are all going to help. Oh, we also have Mana Vault. But these are going to help try to get that 6-drop out as soon as possible. It's gonna eat up a lot of removal once people start to see how it's Kalia from the graveyard, and it's not restrictive. Sorry, but yeah, this is what our ramp is gonna look like. 13. I could go a little bit more, but I'm a greedy kind of player. But what's going to fill up our graveyard? Well, let's go to our discard effects, and we're just going to go in the same order that we have it in here, right? Actually, we'll go ahead and talk about all the creatures, and then we'll talk about all the spells. So we have Anjay Falconwrath, who's a 3-drop that can come down pretty early and start filling up our graveyard pretty fast, and with the added benefit of every time we discard, we get to draw a card, and then if we have things that let us if we discard more cards, we can go ahead and untap her. We have Cavalier of Flame, who when it enters the battlefield, you can go ahead and discard any number of cards in your hand and then draw that many cards, which is great because that way we can just go ahead and discard nothing but our fat creatures and then just draw other cards, hopefully instants and sorceries, or more ramp spells, just to go ahead and fill up our graveyard really fast and then refresh our hand with things that we could use for the moment, because we have a very top heavy curve on this thing. We have Dragon Mage, so this is the great thing, right? Because these creatures come down tapped and attacking, any creatures that have attack triggers don't get to trigger this turn. So we have a couple of creatures in here that trigger off of combat damage versus triggering off of attack damage, and Dragon Mage is probably one of those things. So when it deals combat damage, each player discards their hand and then draws 7 cards. Now, normally I really don't like giving other players any type of cards in their hand, but for this one, our graveyard is basically gonna be our Reliquary Tower hand. It's gonna have as many cards as we can put into it, and so people having more cards in their hand is possible. The way I'm gonna look at it for this game, or for this deck, is that we're disrupting their plans, right? Sometimes people set up, they leave up mana or something like that because they want to set up for something else. So we're either going to force them to use spells when they don't want to, when it's the least optimal, or we're just going to go ahead and get their combo pieces into the graveyard and hopefully far away from their reach. we have another card like Magus of the Wheel, because he is $2 versus Wheel of Fortune. That's like, I don't know, like $400 or $500. We have Naheb Dread Horde, who's gonna pull double duty again. It's gonna when it deals combat damage, we get to go ahead and discard we're gonna go ahead and be able to discard as many cards and then draw that many cards, but we're also gonna get that many red mana to go ahead and use that for our main phase 2. We have Sire of Insanity, which is a card that I know once it hits the table, there is a collective sigh from your opponents. But obviously, you're only going to recur them when it's going to be the most beneficial for you, right? You either have no hand, and you're like, okay, I also don't want anyone else to have a hand, or you have nothing but creatures in your hand, and you want to get them to the graveyard ASAP. And so that also is going to disrupt, because that end step trigger triggers every end step. So yeah, it is the saltiest of cards. But let's go ahead and talk about the spells for our discard pile. So we have Cathartic Pyre, which is an instant great. Pulling double duty. I like cards that are able to do two things at once, right? Because then it kind of acts as two spells. So we have this one that does instant 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker, which is not a lot, but hey, sometimes it really matters. And then we also have at instant speed, discard up to 2 cards, and then draw that many cards. So, like, if you don't have 2 cards, it's not relegated to you being important to having 2 cards. You could go ahead and discard 1 card to draw a card. So it's for me, it's a little bit better than Cathartic Reunion, even though Cathartic Reunion lets you draw 3 cards, but it's also at sorcery speed. We have the new card from Crimson Vow called Change of Fortune. Discard your hand, then draw a card for each card you discarded this turn. So that doesn't just relegate itself to this spell, right? So if you have Andre Falconwrath, if you Cathartic Pyre, or any other thing, right? If you Dragon Mage, you can go ahead and Dragon Mage, draw into Change of Fortune. You have a fresh new 7. All right, cool. Then I'm gonna cast Change of Fortune. I'm going to draw, I don't know, 12, 10, more than what you've had at the start, because it counts. It's like almost like Aetherflux Reservoir, where it counts every discarded card prior to you casting the spell. And we have Faithless Looting. I think that's a no-brainer. So good that I got banned in Modern. And again, it's like 2 spells in 1, because for 1 you can go and draw a card, discard 2 cards, draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards, and then for later when you have nothing but bombs in your hands and you're like, oh, okay, I want to put something in my graveyard to then reoccur or reanimate, you flash back it for 3. So basically you're getting, I don't know, a Shieldred for 3 mana. Thrill of Possibility, just a worse version of Cathartic Pyre. But you still get to discard a card and draw 2 cards. We have Unexpected Windfall, which is 4 mana. It's a little steep, but you get to draw 2 cards and gain 2 treasures. So it can kind of act like pseudo ramp for the next turn. So you drop your land on turn 4. You're at 4 lands and you're kind of slow. So you pass at the end step before your turn. You do it, and then you can cast Olivia on turn 5, just a turn earlier, and you're able to go ahead and put a fatty down. So, Wheel of Misfortune. Now I know, like I said, Wheel of Fortune is $400. I will happily take some damage, and I don't know how much this card is right now, $8, whatever. And and then some, and it's a little bit of more of like, political wise, people could just go ahead be like, all right, 0, they don't want to take any damage, and they like their hand, and you just want to refill yours. So in that regards, it's a little bit better. It doesn't get people as salty as Wheel of Fortune might when they have their hand nice and set up. But this is really just for you to discard your hand and draw a fresh new 7, right? So let's go to all right, let's go to the cards. Let's go to the creatures and stuff that you want to go ahead and reanimate, right? Let's go to the ETB creatures. So besides Panharmonicon, which is double ETBs, we have cards like Archon of Cruelty, which at 8 mana is really steep in a lot of decks, right? But it's such a strong creature because whenever it enters or attacks, target opponent sacks a creature or planeswalker, discards a card, and loses 3 life. You, on turn, get to draw a card and gain 3 life. Insane. And it's a 6/6 flyer. So, huge. Being able to cheat it out, if you can get Olivia turn 4, and this is one of the cards that you've been able to discard. Getting to get it on turn 5 is amazing. Even on turn 6, even if it's just on curve, right? We have cards like Combustible Gear Hulk, which, you know, through the years, I have loved more and more. Right, just for the fact that it's something that you could easily flicker or start to recur and do it over and over and abuse, and at some point people are gonna be like, just draw the cards, just draw the cards. But yeah, another card that you can go ahead and just keep on recurring from our other our other tab right here, Save Me from Exile. We have Gonti, because, you know, what's more fun than playing your deck? Playing your opponent's decks. And then we have Grey Merchant of Asphodel. I mean, if we are able to get our devotion high enough, it could be one of those. It's consistently been one of those cards that's been able to seal the game for a lot of people, right? Especially in mono black. But Rakdos, and we're pretty heavy. We're pretty split evenly on red and black, and most of our black is creatures with, as you can see, double black in the casting cost. So that'll be great. And then we have Sandstone Oracle, which I think was always a funny card for me. I try to find ways to fit it into decks, but this is probably one of those decks where it's easy slot in, because you can go ahead and discard it to one of our discard effects, and then you get to refill your hand to whoever is drawing the most cards, right? There's always a Simic player somewhere. And then we have our another tab, Extra Combats, which, you know, Morog and Port Razor, you know, they're a bit on the cheaper side, so definitely it's pretty good. But this will give us multiple recursion targets. So this mainly is for getting extra combats to get extra creatures onto the board. Let's go ahead and go to removal. So usually when you're trying to build a pretty creature heavy deck, or creature-centric type of commander, like Olivia is, where the trigger is coming from playing cards from your graveyard, you want to get as many spells, you know, as you can onto creatures, because those are gonna, you know, those are what you're cheating out, right? So we have Noxious Gear Hulk, which is gonna come and destroy another target creature, also gains you life. We have Plague Crafter, which I like a lot more than Fleshbag Marauder and Merciless Executioner, just because if they don't have a creature, at least they have to discard a card, right? We have and then we have the two good boys, Ravenous Chupacabra and Shriekmaw. That's gonna be sort of our removal package. We also have on our targeted removal, we have Deadly Rollick, because it's a free spell, right? See, let's go to our reanimate section. So let me go and do the non-creature spells first. So we have the, you know, the animate dead, we have the reanimate living death, to where when our graveyard gets really filled up, and then we have a card like Persist. But we also have our creatures. We have Trainer, Nightmare Adept, who is also a discard outlet. So maybe Olivia's gotten a little too expensive at this point. And you need a backup commander, right? A Chainer and Draina can actually do that for you. So, and then Chainer, whenever you cast a spell, when a non-token creature enters the battlefield from the graveyard, it gains haste. And then Draina is an attack trigger, and you know, someone has to the what's it called? The backside or the downside of this is that your opponent gets to choose the creature for you, and so hopefully you're filling this with enough bomb type of creatures, like, I don't know, Sepulchral Primordial. When it enters the battlefield, you get to choose a creature from everybody's graveyard. And of course, we have Shielded Whispering One. How could you not? Just because it'll make people sacrifice at the beginning of their upkeeps, and then you get to recur something at your upkeep. Let's see. Let's go to our. We have a tutor package. There's a couple of creatures I put in here. And then I know things like Buried Alive and Entomb technically aren't tutors, but for this deck, you're getting to fill your graveyard up. It's pretty much a tutor because you're playing a lot off of your graveyard. So things like Buried Alive, where you get to put 3 different creatures onto there, or Entomb, is at instant speed is awesome. Expedition map is just here to get Cabal Coffers or Urborg. But we have Burning Rune Demon, which acts like a intuition. You get 2 cards from it, and then you what's it called? Sorry. When Burning Rune Demon enters the battlefield, you may search your library for exactly 2 cards not named Burning Rune Demon that have different names. If you do, reveal those cards. An opponent chooses, and you put one to your hand, and then you put one to the graveyard. Yeah, so that's a good way. You grab 2 bombs. That's what you do. And then your opponent's going to go ahead and choose the lesser of the evils, right? And then we have Demonic Tutor, Vampiric Tutor, which is your standard tutor set. But gamble here, sometimes it's a feels bad, right? When you gamble for the card and then you have to discard that card at random. But in this one, hopefully, like you have a heavy creature hand, you gamble for another huge creature before you're going to swing out and attack with Olivia, and then you just get a bomb in your graveyard. So, this is what our little tutor package is going to be looking like. Let's go to Reanimate. Oh, no, I already did that. Sorry. Alright, let's go to Cheat. So, we have 2 G cards. Not really cheat, but Sneak Attack is kind of a cheat, right? For 1 mana, you get to attack. You guys know what Sneak Attack does, right? But for those that don't, for 1 red, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. That creature gains haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So you can go ahead, drop one of these fatties down, turn 5, attack with it, and then sack it. And then on turn 6, if you're gonna get your commander on curve, you play Olivia, go ahead and attack with her and get the same fatty back onto the graveyard, right? We have Atali, Primal Storm. It's a cheat card because you get to play 4 spells for free when it attacks. That's it. That's all I have to say about that card. And then we go to our board wipes, which is pretty slim, I know, but I really wanted to put a bunch of creatures in here just to really have fun. I thought this deck was going to be cash-ish. I mean, obviously, with the ramp that we have, it's pretty expensive, but there's plenty of budget alternatives for that. But we have Balefire Dragon, which is another damage trigger effect, which is what I like right here, right? And it deals damage. So Balefire reads flying for 7 mana, 5 and 2 red, 7 mana creature dragon flying. Whenever Balefire deals combat damage to a player, it deals damage to each creature that player controls. So trying to get rid of these token decks or these little weenie decks. And then we have Blasphemous Act. Most of the time it's 1 red mana. But we have to go for our save from exile, because a lot of these creatures get exiled if you don't control a legendary vampire, and unfortunately we only have 2 legendary vampires in here, Olivia and Drana, the Last Blood Chief, right? So we have some sack outlets in here. We have Altar of Dementia to go ahead and try to mill an opponent for a good amount, just in case your Olivia is about to get removed. We have Ashnod's Altar, which, it's Ashnod's Altar. And then we have Vizier Seer. So, kind of the classic sacrifice units over here. So, yeah, I think that's going to be it for this deck. As you can see, you're really just trying... This is kind of... It's a glass cannon, right? It's a glass cannon type of deck. But, that's where the fun is, Oh, actually, we gotta talk about our protection. I am sorry. Let's go back. So protection. So we got Deflecting Swat, and then we have Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots. The classic protection package. Because Olivia Crimson Bride is 6 mana. It could get expensive pretty fast. Once it gets removed maybe 2 times, you're like, oh man, is it even worth casting anymore? So, I know the protection slot right here is pretty slim, but I want more creatures. Let's go ahead and see what this looks like on the outside. So, let's go to type right here. this is sporting 27 creatures, and a lot of it's on the heavy side. 17 artifacts, sorcery, enchantment. Everything's pretty low. Everything's into creatures. So for Olivia, who's triggering off creatures, that's how I wanted to build her. I thought it was going to be more fun that way. If you guys want me to do a budget version of this, I can. Most definitely. If you guys, because this deck is kind of expensive here. It's what's it called? TCG has it at $12.86. Obviously, we could talk about the lands. We have Arid Mesa. We have Badlands, Bloodstained Mire. So we have a bunch of fetch lands. We have 10 basics or 20 basics. We have Urborg. We have Cabal Coffers. So it's run of the mill. I really hate talking about lands. Oh, I should probably add an Ancient Tomb in here. By the way. But yeah, this is gonna be my Olivia Crimson Bride deck. Hope you guys enjoy this episode. Hope you guys want me to. If you guys want me to do more of these deck techs, definitely can. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe below. Always appreciate it, guys. Have a good day.